Quilty is brought to you by
Baby Lock. Baby Lock sewing and long arm machines. From piecing to long arming for the love of sewing. Aurifil. Aurifil Italian thread. Perfectly suited for all your quilting projects. Dear Stella. A unique fabric brand with modern style. Fairfield. Together, we can make beautiful things. Hovels Sewing. Cut to the point with Hovels Sewing. Moda. Make something quilty with Moda fabrics. Northcott. Cottons that feel like silk. Omnigrid. Providing quilters with specialty rulers and accessories for over 30 years. Hi out there, you're watching Quilty. I'm here with Heather Kinion. We're like co-hosts, man. Good to have you.
Thanks, it's good to be here.
We're going to talk about an important part of your quilt making process today on Quilty, basting.
Yes, but we're going to talk about basting with stitches instead of with adhesive or safety pins, which I feel like are a lot more common with the modern quilters.
Because most modern quilters are machine quilting. Most, and that's what you do when you machine quilt. You baste with safety pins mostly.
Yeah, because it's easy to pull them out right there.
Yeah. So we have two examples in front of us. Tell me what this one is, Heather.
So this one is basting on your sewing machine. So this was on the Baby Lock Soprano over there. And you just essentially, there's two ways to do it. You make it the longest stitch that the machine will make.
Set your machine to the...
It's similar then to just regular quilting at that point.
Yes.
It's a little trickier on bigger pieces, unless you want to essentially free motion those lines and you drop the feed dogs, and then you can make the stitches extra really long.
Yes.
And it just holds layers together very gently.
Right.
This is a really good way to, even if you free motion quilted the whole machine, go around the very edges and hold them down to prep for binding.
I often do baste the very outside edges of my quilt top. And by the way, maybe I should have done this at the top of the show, but basting, just so you know, is putting the 3 layers of your quilt. You have the back, okay? You have the batting, and you have the top, okay? And that's your quilt sandwich. And basting is however way you choose to put those pieces of the sandwich together before you quilt it. So another clarification, Heather, is how is basting different from actually quilting your quilt?
Well, usually if you're quilting your quilt, you've already done the basting to keep it all flat, and you
Right.
usually have a pattern or a set line that you're very carefully following.
That's what it
That's
is.
the main difference. This way, if you're using the walking foot with the biggest stitch, the feed dogs are doing the work of pulling it through. If you're using the free motion foot, you're doing the work of pushing it through the machine.
Right.
It can be difficult to keep it really flat if you're gonna baste with stitches in your home machine, just
Right.
because the quilt itself is going to get so big and hard to fit under the throat. Small pieces this size or smaller, you could easily baste by machine this way. And you might want to do that if you were going to say hand quilt a small piece.
Right.
This is a great way to get it nice and flat and basted, and then it will fit in your hoop nicely. Or if you don't use a hoop, if you do long stitch quilting, you're set.
And the thing that you said in there that was really important is that, yes, you're putting together your quilt sandwich and you're stitching all over this, but it's not in any pattern. It's just to keep things together before you do your fabulous, intricate machine quilting.
Yes.
Okay, and every quilt needs to be basted before you quilt it. I mean, otherwise it's the dog's breakfast.
Right. And so this is an example of basting by hand.
Yeah.
And you start with a hoop, and you can sort of start by once you spread your quilt sandwich out and you've got it in the center, you can essentially, just from the center of your piece, put the hoop in, tighten it. It doesn't have to be tight like a drum like you would if you were quilting.
Hand piece, or
hand
quilting.
quilting.
You're right.
Yes.
Yes, sorry.
So I already did this one. It's kind of hard to see with this, but you want to pick usually a contrasting thread, and you essentially pull it in. I usually pull the first one all the way under. You don't want to pull too hard because you don't want to pull your knot all the way through.
Right.
You also don't even need to worry about burying your knot. Leave it sticking out right there on top because you're going to pull it out later. You don't care.
That's the thing, is that if you're not totally seeing this just yet, know that all your basting stitches come out.
Yeah,
They do not stay in your quilt. Once you're done quilting your quilt for real, all those basting stitches come away.
And for me, it works best to sort of take 1 or 2 really big stitches at a time.
Yeah.
And you don't have to worry about size. You don't have to worry about direction. You don't have to worry about where they're going. You just push them through. Sometimes I'll wear like a little thimble or a Band-Aid on the back finger to help push it through the back.
And you know, I've seen hand basting that my mom's done. In fact, on an episode of Quilty, either you've seen it or you'll be seeing it in the future. She did some hand quilting. We did a two-part episode on hand quilting, and her basting stitches were like this big.
Yeah.
I mean, she like whipped through a quilt top with really long basting stitches. So it's your preference, it's your project, it's however you want to do it, not just with the length of your basting stitches by hand, but any way you choose to baste your project. And there's spray basting.
Yes.
And there's fusible stuff.
Anyway. This made me I'd never done stitch basting before. I had a quilt teacher, Sarah Nishura, who's a big fan of it, and was trying to get me to do it over and over.
Yeah.
And I love it because when it comes out, it's totally flat and totally together. Even though this is fairly dense hand stitch basting, it stays really flat. So if I was going to use this as a hand quilting project or even just through my machine, when you baste with safety pins, like if you move it around too much or fold it, it'll start to gap and bag and be kind of not stay as flat. But this stays really flat.
Flatter? Why?
I'm guessing that when I'm pushing the needle through, I'm smoothing as I go, and you keep moving your hoop and smoothing and moving your hoop and smoothing as you work on a bigger project.
You're working it. It's like clay.
Yeah, you're really helping
so true.
Flatten it out in the ways that you aren't when you're picking it up, essentially, to stick the safety pin through it.
Yeah, you know, I learn on this show as much as anybody. I do. I learn.
Me too.
So we've got machine basting. We've got stitch basting, hand stitch basting. And you said you kind of prefer this method, but again, it depends on the project.
Right, for the project, this really is flat. And it didn't take as long as I thought it was going to take, which is the reason I'd avoided it. I was like, that's going to take forever. And I, sat down, watched a documentary on Netflix, put this together, and I don't know, it probably took me 45 minutes, maybe?
Beautiful.
Maybe that long.
Yeah, cool. Well, try out whatever you want on your quilt and baste away, kids. Oh, I just thought of a joke. This is our new soprano machine. What do you call a group of soprano machines?
I don't know.
The Sopranos. Terrible. Why don't you sign us off since I'm ashamed? I'm shamed.
Well, thanks for watching Quilty, and we'll see you next time.
Quilty is brought to you by
Baby Lock. Baby Lock sewing and long arm machines. From piecing to long arming for the love of sewing. Aurifil Italian thread. Perfectly suited for all your quilting projects. Dear Stella, a unique fabric brand with modern style. Fairfield, together we can make beautiful things. Hovels Sewing, cut to the point with Hovels Sewing. Moda, make something quilty with Moda fabrics. Northcott, cottons that feel like silk. Omnigrid, providing quilters with specialty rulers and accessories for over 30 years.